Okay, brand leaders, here's an opportunity for you to start to understand valuation versus performance when it comes to maximizing asset impact in sponsorship. This is season 1 of the Sponsorship X podcast, all focused on ROI, episode 5, and it features Francis Dumais, one of the founders and partners at Elevent, and he's going to be talking to Julian Franklin from Franklin Management Group. You're going to learn strategies and tools to measure performance versus valuation when it comes to your sponsorship portfolio. So have a listen. Get ready to learn.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that we're here at Sponsorship X ROI Forum. Pleased to start this session, Valuation versus Performance, Maximizing Asset Impact. This is a live podcast, and I'm pleased to be here with Francis Dumais, Managing Partner of Elevent, and myself, Julian Franklin, Principal of Franklin Management Group. So, Francis, let's get to know you a little bit. As we were talking to kick this off, we were, regaling in some of your running stories. And for the audience, tell us a little bit about your passion for running and how that's come to be as part of your own career in sponsorship.
Yeah, it's interesting. It started about at the same time. I was doing my master's in marketing, and we were on a field trip in Roswell, New Mexico, to some old Hunter podcast. But it was one of the person in the group was a runner, and I think I only had like skate shoes and like large shorts, and we went for a run at like 6 a.m. and I didn't know, but the desert is really cold in March at night. So I was in for a good flu after that, but that's the first time I went for a run, and then it gradually built over time.
I would say, I am a runner myself, not as profound as yourself, but, one of the things that I've consistently loved about the sport is just the ability for it to just clear my mind and let me think of so many things. I'm a victim of routine. I start my day, when it's not minus 20 and windy in Toronto, but I start my day, with a run. I do the same route, usually about a 9K route. It usually ends uphill, so I do give myself that extra push to get home. But it is something that, for me, has really worked in helping kind of clear my mind and also set up my goals of what I wanted to do each day. And I think it's helped me throughout my career. Tell me how that's continued from that cold night or morning in Roswell, New Mexico, to now.
And to your point, it's all about consistency. It becomes a habit. You don't have to think, oh, it's raining, it's cold, I'm tired. You go out.
You become a robot. You just do it. Yeah.
And it's interesting because to come back with the connection between running and sponsorships, I attended Running USA, and I took an interest in how the running events were running their sponsorship programs as well. So we did, there's part of the research that we ran, we're going to talk about today, that also covers the performance of running events sponsorship.
Yeah, and let's jump into it. But before we do, give us for the audience a little bit of a snapshot of Elevent and kind of what Elevent has focused on, and then we can transition to some of the great research that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So we're a sponsorship intelligence company. So it means that we basically cover the entire life cycle. We don't do any creative work, but everything that goes on behind the scene, from what sponsorship should be used for in an organization, what's the purpose of sponsorships, because as you know, it could be more expensive and more complex than just running ads, to building a sponsorship policy or frame around sponsorship, criteria on how to select properties, evaluating, negotiating assets, and then all the way to measuring performance, which is what we'll talk about today. And we do that through a mix of consulting, market research, and software.
And you would say that, you've been in the industry now for the better part of at least a decade, possibly longer. Has your own intelligence of what Elevent has delivered transitioned or changed with the sponsorship landscape, or have you found that you're ahead of your time and a lot of people have caught up? Because within the marketplace, or for anybody who does not know the great work that Elevent has done with some of the proprietary tools that you've used, the really I've seen has come to fruition even 3 or 4 years ago when we knew each other.
Yeah, when we launched in 2013, we were definitely ahead of our time, and our first software was a market flop.
You were ahead of your time.
There you go.
Exactly.
But our thinking was to democratize measurement and valuation. And we actually thought that if we were to automate the valuation process, offer it online for properties, and just to remind you of how the market evolved, it was already expensive at the time to do the work, but we were like, we'll charge $500, right, for evaluation, but people will fill it themselves, and then get the result. But we probably sold 5 of those, and every time we got a phone call, like, the value is great, that doesn't help me go to market. Like, I have other issues, or the value is terrible. What do I do now? So it evolved into a consulting firm, and then we rebuilt the software for brands, and taking those insights into account, because value is absolutely necessary, and we'll talk about value a lot. But the way that you make the decision to sponsor something must be based on other things, softer metrics, demographics. So we built a lot of indexes and measures in those reports now to measure fit. You know that relevance is a huge factor and has an impact on performance. So even before you sign a deal, you can picture, there are ways to measure that before you actually spend money.
The Sponsor of X podcast will be right back. This episode is brought to you in part by the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. Spanning 6 cities, putting on 25 shows to over 200,000 attendees across North America, the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival has featured the likes of Martin Short, Whitney Cummings, and John Mulvaney on their stages. But the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival is more than just a festival. Since its inception, it has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for community initiatives, mental health, and other important charities. So if you want to enjoy a cabaret-style comedy festival under the skies, if you want to enjoy the opportunity to see local talent with big names on the same stage, the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival is for you. For tickets and shows information, go to greatoutdoorscomedyfestival.com for big laughs, massive impact, and a great time.
That's great. And why don't we, it's a great segue into the one-of-a-kind research that Elevent has done when it comes to, what has really become a real premier property in the world of sponsorship or partnership, which is Jersey Patch. And, how, just a little bit about, for the audience, a number of the major leagues within North America, have really jumped onto this phenomena, some pre-COVID, others really coming out of COVID really had jumped into that. But then we also know that, in Europe, it has been forever thus, right? If you look at the hockey and look at football, sponsorship has been that way. But maybe tell us a little bit about some of the research that in your findings as you were doing this on Jersey Patch in particular, and some of the outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw a lot of the headlines on the marketing sites saying, well, the Jersey Patch is generating X amount of impressions, or have been sold for XYZ, or is worth X, millions of dollars. And we were curious as to how it actually performed against other assets, because the fact that it's sold at a high price was due to the fact that it's as you said, a premium assets. It's rare. It's only one, two per teams, maybe.
One of one, two of two, if that, right?
There you go. So we wanted to compare value and performance. And what we did was to do 2 things. So we have a software that through AI detects logos in broadcast and on social media, as well as mentions, logo and still images. We call it Spot. So we ran the numbers, and a lot of the average value of jerseys in the NBA have floated around. It's around 10 million.
Yeah.
So we did find that it was worth about that. But to our surprise, linear broadcast didn't deliver most of the value. Is social media.
Yes.
So 3/4 of that value came from social, and it makes sense when you think about it. If you had a close-up, you'll see the patch, but if you're sitting in the stadium or at home and there's a lot of action on the screen, you're not going to have those close-ups on the patch. And so that's one thing. Value is certainly one thing, and you have to look at it absolutely. But then we were curious about performance. And we did a 5,000 people survey across the U.S. We had this 5,000 is a good sample.
It's a good sample size, yeah.
And it allowed us to dive deeper at the team level. And what we found was that the patch was effective in some contexts and maybe not so in other contexts, better with some demographics, not so much in other with other demographics. So it's a lot more complex than just if you're a brand buying an asset that will generate a lot of impressions.
I think what you had talked about too in your piece is also the relevance, right? And brands, particularly if you're making a significant investment in a patch, to understand, where and how you'll show up. I think it's really interesting about the impact of social media really delivering, maybe versus television. But then when you dig a little bit deeper, you're like, that starts to make sense. First of all, how the patch shows up in social, Instagram, TikTok, etc., where you're really able to focus on it. There's less clutter than you would see on TV when there's so many other things, fans, other things on the court, etc., under the basket that are really to take your eye. And then, one of the other things that, you think about for some brands, maybe the ability to see your jersey when it's purchased, to see your logo. And there's also an element of a vanity factor. So I think it's really interesting because you dig down. With what you've seen, what are some of the recommendations or thoughts for, brands as well as teams as they begin to engage in maybe a renewal for a jersey patch or continuing to go seek, a new patch partner? Because I think what we could agree on is these are here to stay. I don't think the teams are going to roll back post-COVID now to say we're okay now. I think these are obviously proven that they're worth, and they are premium assets. So what would you think are a couple of the outcomes and things to think about?
Yeah, I could start up with a few stats. Yeah. So through the research, we noticed that about a quarter of the audience was able to correctly identify the in the case of the NBA, right, the jersey patch, and you're thinking, well, it's on the players,
right?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, how can people not remember? But the numbers were different. So we compared local in-markets fans to fans that were out of market. Mm-hmm. The scores were better in market. We compared it to other assets like the naming rights.
Yes.
Of the venues, the sports venues. The naming rights fared significantly better.
Interesting.
At about half of the fans or the audience being able to correctly identify the partner. So there's definitely a notion of duration. So the longer you're there, obviously the more impact you'll have, and that's true for all assets, right, all sponsorships. But if you're, let's say, a jersey partner, you'll probably get good results online. So maybe you want to have more in-venue assets, not necessarily TV visible, but in and around the stadium, right? Or more engagement assets where you can actually activate and engage with fans. And depending on if you want to use this asset to increase your awareness or to be top of mind nationally or in your market, it'll definitely change how you should approach things.
That's great. You left a couple of nuggets there that I may want to double click on. And one is, jersey patch versus stadium naming rights. And, in some of these cases, you're looking at brands that are making some significant investments. And so if there's an opportunity that a property has one or both available, for the purposes of the study, the recall of the stadium rights seemed to perform better. You want to talk a little bit more about that and what it was that drove that?
Yeah, it was almost double, and it was true for pretty much across the board. Obviously, the partnerships that were that had been signed for a longer period. And obviously, stadium naming rights usually are longer term deals than the patches are. We've seen a few of the brands circle through already on the patch. But yeah, and to compare cost and performance, I know in some markets, 20 million may not get you very far for stadium naming rights, but you could certainly purchase a naming rights for $10 million, which is the average price of the patch in the market. So just price-wise, that's an element to consider. In an ice logo in terms for hockey or rinker board or dasher board or an A-frame may produce pretty good results too.
And some of those assets, are definitely considered premium assets, for a lot of the teams and also the leagues that have them. Would you say, that that's something that continues to grow as far as the evaluation as, TV and streaming still continues to be a main, and social for that matter, a main way of fans and eyeballs and engagement happening?
You definitely need both the impressions and the engagement through activation. And I think that's with those premium assets, whether it be naming rights or jersey patch, one thing that we notice is that I think some of the brands are like, it's such a good asset and it's so expensive that it'll work on its own. But as we know, it'll deliver value if you invest and you tell a story, because
100%.
It's pretty static. It won't tell the story of what you're doing there as a brand, and the storytelling and the purpose of being a sponsor and supporting the team. So I think that's where you'll definitely generate more results from a performance perspective.
I like where you're going with that, because I think some of the things that, I've noticed through my time as well is, the jersey patch as an example, in the NBA is now the ability for the patch to be on shooting shirts and other elements, right? So the jersey patch may be the premium asset, but there's an ability now to monetize and showcase other, parts of the uniform pre and post game. And beyond that, just being an asset that you said is static, what is the story behind that kind of helps drive that, the awareness and also kind of the purchase intent and the relevance. So I think that you're right. The story needs to be supportive of the data, which is good. And maybe a segue into that. Are there a couple of examples, not to name too many names or call any teams up, but are there that come to mind that you had said during your study that had worked well, or there's maybe still a little bit of a hill to climb to really see their true value?
It's an interesting question. Yes, we did see some names that were a bit of a mouthful for the brands, for the audience, for the fans. If you look at Climate Pledge Arena, obviously it's not tied to directly to the brand, but people know who is behind the initiative. That was a lot easier to recall than I think, I don't have it in top of mind, but it's like credit.
Right. I think I was going to say credit card, but it's not. But yeah. It will come to that at the end. But yes, you're right. There's a recall. The Climate Pledge, I do recall quite well, among a few others.
In F1, they made a sketch on it at the 75th anniversary at the launch of the season, like the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. Like, who uses that? It's, so you have to think that through.
So you need memorization skills as well when you do this, right? To remember all of that.
Yeah, and I think if your name as a brand is not suited for naming rights, maybe you aim for a different.
Yeah. And as we also try and help brands through this conversation in working smarter, and also properties providing what brands need so that you can get to the decisions, because ultimately the assets are extremely valuable and important. It's just making sure it's packaged the right way, that it's an investment that helps both the partner and the property get to the overall outcome.
We'll be right back to the Sponsorship Next podcast. But first, a quick word from Explore Edmonton. What if your next event didn't just entertain? What if it created a movement? In Edmonton, game changers live here and they come to play. This is a city that dares to do things differently. In sport, in community, in culture, Edmonton doesn't just host events, it creates launch pads for change. From the legendary Edmonton grads to Olympic stars like the Plouffe sisters, women's sports has deep roots in Edmonton and a bold future. On our courts and on our pitches, legacies are written. In our arenas and stadiums, records are broken. Because here, it's not just about the win, it's about what you leave behind. Whether you're an athlete, an organizer, or a fan, if you're ready to rewrite the rules, Edmonton is your stage. Legacy isn't just remembered here, it's built. Game changers live here. Change the game, create your legacy. Visit thisisthegame.ca.
Beyond the awareness that we talked about, any other metrics or, key points that you would say would be relevant that brands should consider?
Absolutely, and I think the thing to remember about this talk is not necessarily value versus impact, but the fact that you have to measure sponsorship outcomes, sponsorship performance through research, and if you do that even prior to signing deals, you can save yourself a lot of money.
Yes. Yes.
One thing that we noticed, we built an index that we called willingness to engage. And we noticed that it was kind of a predictor of performance.
Interesting.
It's you can measure it at a league level or a team level, but it's really how open the fans in the audience are to brands.
Interesting.
And there's a few variables that go into measuring that, but it's pretty significant. If you're thinking of investing $10 million a year on an asset, it may be worth paying a few small percentages of that in pre-signing research to make sure you're reaching the right audience and to test if that partnership will actually work.
And would you say like the willingness to engage, I think is a great idea and a great tool. Has it come as a result of some of your own findings of maybe failed opportunities with partnerships or aha moments post that really, your own experience of seeing brands stepping into something without really fully engaging, or how did you come up with that? Because I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, it's interesting because in my previous role, I was managing sponsorships at a telco. It was interesting where sometimes the sponsorship didn't work at all. It didn't stick with the audience. And what we had at the time had a proxy to measure that, and it's kind of the interest in technology. So if you had the latest phone, if you shared a lot of data or pictures at the time, and you talked to your friends about technology, or more, we had better results. So better recall, better opinion of the brand, better engagement. So that was kind of the initial, the prototype, if you will, of the willingness to engage. And we've been doing market research now for sponsorship specifically for 10 years. So we've seen patterns and we've evolved this metric.
And, on building on top of that, like what do you see, future forward? Not only when it comes to some of these assets, but just the overall awareness of how partnerships and sponsorships are going to be in this landscape. Much more, data-driven, more need of more storytelling. Like, what are your own personal, opinion of kind of how we're looking over the next, probably 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. Well, we're saying that we were a bit ahead of the parade at the time. It's interesting, and we're at the ROI Forum. Yeah. It's not just one keynote within a sponsorship industry event. So the tide has definitely shifted. We see marketers that have grown up with digital advertising and being able to measure things in real time. So they expect similar things from sponsorships. And the level of expertise has increased in the last years. First, on the brand side, the rights holders have to pick up the pace, and it's, I think, great for the industry as a whole, because in a previous life, and I think it's true for a lot of the brand marketers, you always have to make a case for sponsorship.
Yes.
You have to protect budget. Yeah. You have to tell people that it's not just a hobby because it's in the entertainment space. Right. So we have to work harder to prove that sponsorship is actually delivering on real business objectives and, client retention and acquisition, not just top of the funnel,
Right.
branding. So all that to say, I think it'll become even more of a thing in the next couple of years. And just like Moneyball, we may see very interesting partnerships that we
Right.
wouldn't necessarily have thought of before, but maybe the audience alignment is perfect, or the image aligns perfectly. So yeah, I think there's still a lot that we'll see from sponsorship.
I it's kind of led me to ask maybe one or two final questions on this, Francis, because I think, for the audience too, is, we also understand some of the bigger, properties and bigger sponsorships and bigger brands that have done, well, and it's splashed across headlines, and we know what some of these deals are. But I think you left something for the audience there when you said, the Moneyball aspect of the right fit of a property and a brand, big or small, but it's able to deliver the audience and able to deliver on the outcome, which in a lot of cases it could be transactional as far as maybe sales, but it could be also, top of the funnel awareness, mid funnel with helping with bringing in new customers, and then bottom funnel conversion, and the property, or sorry, the brand getting smarter about that. Do you feel like there's more of those out there that people are like, I'm okay if my sponsorship is maybe small, not well known, but it's effective?
Yeah, and I think we'll have a rise in what we maybe can brand as programs or activation programs. So you may have one activation that you're running through different events that have nothing in common, or you're going to a property and you're building your own thing within that property, your own program that you own. It won't be branded with another brand if you leave.
Yes.
Really like more ownable properties. So fewer brands, maybe less clutter, bigger investments, but each in their own verticals that they can own, and obviously with a tie into their brand and business.
That's great. And question I have to build on that, ask probably your opinion is, how relevant will AI and social be in telling these stories for brands, or becoming more efficient, in your opinion, as you see it?
I think AI will touch all of the businesses. Like, no one is safe.
Loaded question.
But there's a funny thing about partnership, and especially sports. So when different technologies came to TV, for instance, like the OTT and the ability to skip ads or to watch at different times, we were thinking, maybe people won't watch live entertainment anymore. But you see the top, and I saw the most recent list, like the top 100 most popular broadcasts in the U.S. And I think
still sports,
90% of it is sports, and it wasn't electoral year, so you had the debates in there. So sports is kind of an outlier in that fact, and I think live entertainment, and Mark alluded it in his keynote presentation. People came back after COVID. They really were eager to go back in person, have those experiences, feel something as a group. So I don't necessarily believe that the AI or the can't remember the name of the Apple goggles. But
that I was going to say Oculus, but is that it? Is that but it could be giving Facebook that.
Yeah, I don't think people will sit in their living room with headsets on to experience a live show with friends, all sitting in each other's basements. So I think we're in a good place. I think the entertainment industry will continue to thrive. We'll see enhanced experience, I'm sure, with AI, but I think we're in an amazing industry, and we'll continue to experience it in person.
Well, I would say that, this has been an amazing chat. Really appreciated, your willingness to kind of share some of the, insights that you'd had through the study on the NBA jersey patch. And I think in general, it's something that really is a takeaway for many of us as we look at premium assets, and understanding how the willingness to engage, and helps a brand to really get that full, access and aspect of what the offer is. I would also say that, the ability to understand how social plays a role into that, how TV plays a role. And if you're doing that in advance, it also helps kind of manage what the expectations are. But also, quite honestly, as you had shared, the investment dollars that some of these brands are making, there are other opportunities within the ecosystem of a partnership, whether it's stadium rights or other big items that really can drive that. So, I would just say that, I think using the running analogy, I think we did a light jog or a mild sprint through this and covered a lot. So, on behalf of the ROI Sponsorship Forum, just want to say thank you, Francis. It's a real pleasure, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you, Julian.